Tonight, we're going to take a slow and quiet look at how medieval peasants survived cold winter nights. There is nothing you need to remember, nothing you need to focus on. You can simply listen. This is not a story of great battles or famous people. It's about ordinary life, lived carefully and quietly during the coldest part of the year. If you begin to drift, that's perfectly fine. The night will continue without you. For medieval peasants, winter was never a surprise. It arrived every year steadily and without exception. Days grew shorter. The sun disappeared earlier each afternoon. The air became sharper and heavier. By late autumn, the signs were clear. The warmth of summer was gone. Winter was coming, and it would stay for months. As the cold deepened, work in the fields slowed. The harvest had already been gathered. Tools were cleaned and stored. Animals were brought closer to home. Life gradually moved indoors. Winter was no longer about production. It was about endurance. Most medieval peasants lived in small single-room houses. These homes were built from materials found nearby: wooden posts, woven branches, mud mixed with straw. The walls were thick but uneven. As the materials dried and shifted, small gaps formed. Cold air passed through easily, especially at night. Windows were rare. If they existed, they were small openings covered with wooden shutters or stretched animal hide. Glass was expensive and uncommon. Most peasants had never seen it. When the shutters were closed, the home became dark very quickly. Light faded long before bedtime. When night arrived, the temperature inside the home dropped. There was little difference between indoors and outdoors. If it was cold outside, it was cold inside too. The ground beneath the floor held the chill of the day. The walls offered little resistance to the wind. At the center of the home was the hearth, not a fireplace with a chimney, but a simple fire pit. This fire was essential. It provided warmth. It provided light. It was used for cooking. Smoke filled the room and drifted upward, escaping through gaps in the roof. Breathing it was unpleasant, but the warmth mattered more. Allowing the fire to die overnight was dangerous. Restarting it in winter required effort and patience. Flint and steel were used to strike sparks. Dry kindling was needed. Cold fingers made the task difficult. So peasants learned to preserve the fire. Before sleep, glowing embers were covered with ash. The ash acted as insulation, trapping heat. If done correctly, the embers survived until morning. At sunrise, the ash was brushed aside. Fresh wood was added. The fire returned without starting from nothing. This simple act was repeated night after night. Before sleeping, peasants ate their final meal of the day. Food in winter was simple and repetitive. Thick soups and stews were common, made from grains, root vegetables, and preserved foods. Warm food helped the body retain heat. Eating late was practical, not indulgent. A full stomach helped endure the cold. As night settled in, preparations were made. Doors were secured with wooden bars. Shutters were closed tightly. Water was placed near the hearth so it wouldn't freeze. Tools were moved closer to warmth. Every action was careful and deliberate. Clothing was worn to bed. Tunics, cloaks, and wool layers were wrapped tightly around the body. Peasants owned few garments. Everything they had was used at once. Removing layers meant losing warmth. Beds were simple wooden frames filled with straw or dried grass. The straw flattened quickly. It offered little protection from the cold rising from the ground. Some slept directly on rushes spread across the floor. Comfort was not expected. Survival was enough. The ground was always cold. Floors were compacted earth. Straw and rushes helped briefly, but lost effectiveness quickly. Cold seeped upward steadily. Sleep was light and often interrupted. Shifting positions helped keep blood flowing. On the coldest nights, warmth came from other people. Families slept close together. Children were placed between adults. The elderly were kept toward the center. Privacy was not a concern. Warmth mattered more. In many homes, animals were brought inside at night. Chickens, goats, sometimes a cow. Their body heat helped warm the space. Sharing a room with animals was normal. They were part of survival. As the fire settled into embers, the home grew quiet. The light faded. Conversation stopped. Breathing slowed. Outside, the wind moved across frozen ground. Inside, bodies rested close together. The night passed slowly. Sleep came in stages. Light sleep, stillness, occasional waking. The body remained alert, even at rest. Every hour survived mattered. Morning arrived quietly. Someone stirred the embers. Another added wood. The fire returned. Hands warmed slowly. Another night had passed. Winter nights were not conquered. They were endured. Through routine, shared warmth, and simple methods, medieval peasants survived, night after night. This was ordinary life, and it continued quietly. As winter progressed, the cold became more consistent. Early winter still carried moments of relief, a mild afternoon, a brief thaw. But deep winter was different. Cold no longer came and went. It stayed. Nights grew longer, and the darkness felt heavier. At night, sound carried differently. Wind moved slowly around the house, pressing against walls and slipping through gaps. Wood creaked as it tightened in the cold. Thatched roofs shifted slightly under frost and snow. Inside, the fire made small, steady sounds. A soft crackle, a low settling of embers. These sounds became familiar. Familiar sounds were comforting. Once everyone settled, the house became still. There was little movement. Every motion risked letting in cold air. Breathing slowed. Occasionally, someone shifted position. The rustle of fabric was brief, then quiet returned. Stillness helped preserve warmth. Even after banking the embers, the fire demanded attention. On especially cold nights, someone might wake briefly to check it. A quick glance, a gentle poke. If embers still glowed, nothing more was done. If the fire weakened, a small piece of fuel might be added. These checks were quiet and practiced. No one wanted to wake the household. Winter nights followed the same pattern, night after night. This repetition mattered. It allowed people to move without thinking, to prepare without worry. Routine replaced uncertainty. Knowing what came next made the cold easier to accept. Clothing rarely came off during winter. Layers worn during the day stayed on at night. Damp garments were dried near the fire when possible. If something froze stiff, it was warmed slowly. Wool was valued for its ability to hold heat, even when heavy and uncomfortable. The body adapted slowly. Hands numbed first, feet followed. Peasants learned to recognize dangerous cold. Loss of feeling, stiff movement. They responded by moving closer to warmth or adjusting layers carefully. Small actions mattered. Sleep was rarely deep. The body remained alert. Cold kept it that way, but rest still came. Short periods of stillness, moments where the body recovered just enough. Even light sleep helped. Sharing space created a sense of safety, not just from cold, but from isolation. Winter nights could feel long. Being surrounded by family made them shorter. Breathing nearby reminded people they were not alone. Food eaten at night served another purpose. Digestion created warmth. The body worked through heavy grains and thick stews slowly. That work produced heat. Meals were timed to support the night, not for pleasure, for endurance. Time moved differently in winter. Without light, hours blurred together. There was no way to measure progress, only waiting, waiting for the first hint of morning. When someone stirred, it often meant dawn was near. A hand reached toward the hearth. Ash was moved gently. Fuel was added. The fire brightened slowly. Light returned to the room. No one rushed. Cold made haste unnecessary. Hands warmed first. Feet followed. Movement returned gradually. Another day had begun. This pattern repeated for weeks, sometimes months. Winter nights were not dramatic. They were persistent. And persistence shaped daily life. Cold affected the mind as much as the body. Darkness encouraged quiet thinking, reflection, patience. There was little choice but to accept the season. Resistance wasted energy. Acceptance conserved it. Neighbors experienced the same nights, the same cold. This shared experience created understanding. No words were needed. Everyone knew what winter demanded. Survival was not about winning. It was about continuing, one night at a time, one morning after another. Winter did not need to be conquered, only endured. Deep winter tested patience more than strength. Routine, shared warmth, and quiet persistence carried people through. Night followed night, and life continued. Slowly. As winter moved toward its later months, the cold remained. It no longer felt new. It no longer demanded attention. It simply existed. By this point, medieval peasants knew exactly what to expect from the night. The routines were familiar, the responses automatic. There was comfort in that familiarity. The body grew tired in a different way during late winter, not from sudden hardship, but from repetition. Cold nights layered themselves one on top of another. Rest was never complete. Still, the body adapted. It learned to function without comfort. The hearth continued its quiet role. Sometimes strong, sometimes weak, but always central. Even a small flame changed the room. It softened shadows. It slowed the cold. The fire was watched carefully, not out of fear, but out of habit. Late winter nights were especially quiet. The wind often eased. Snow muffled distant sounds. The world outside felt suspended. Inside, movement was minimal. Breathing. The occasional shift, then stillness again. By this time, clothing showed wear. Wool thinned at the elbows, cloaks frayed at the edges. Repairs were simple, small stitches, rough patches, nothing decorative. Function mattered more than appearance. Sleep came more easily in late winter, not because it was warmer, but because the body had adjusted. The cold no longer surprised it. Muscles relaxed faster. Breathing slowed sooner. Even shallow rest felt restorative. The mind, too, grew quieter. Thoughts slowed. Expectations lowered. Winter encouraged patience. There was no urgency, only the steady passing of time. Despite the cold, signs of change were quietly noticed. The light lingered slightly longer at dusk. Morning arrived a little earlier. These changes were subtle, but meaningful. They suggested movement. By late winter, food stores were lower. Meals became smaller, more repetitive. Nothing was wasted. Every portion was measured. The body adjusted to less. Slowly, nights shortened. The difference was barely noticeable, but it existed. Darkness released its hold a little sooner. This brought relief. Even without warmth. With more light came gentle activity. Tools were checked. Animals were watched more closely. Plans began forming quietly. Spring was not here yet, but it was no longer distant. The last weeks of winter felt different. The cold remained, but its authority weakened. Peasants still slept close together, still relied on the fire, still wore every layer they owned. But hope returned. Winter nights left their mark on the body, on memory. They taught patience. They reinforced routine. They reminded people what was essential. There was no celebration when winter ended, just gradual change. Cold loosened its grip. Light returned. Work resumed. Life continued, as it always had. For medieval peasants, surviving cold winter nights was not heroic. It was ordinary. It was built on simple habits, shared warmth, routine, endurance, night after night, season after season. As the fire dims and the room grows quiet once more, the night settles in. There is nothing left to do, nothing left to prepare. You can rest now. The story continues quietly on its own.